France needed to be very, very good to see off Ireland tonight. It's been obvious for some time that they're looking the real deal again. But this team now has this victory to move forward with in the championship. Ireland get a losing bonus point in the second half. They'd have been dreaming of so much more, Gordon.
Yeah, it'll be a case of the what if. I think there will, in the cold light of day, we'll look back at this and we'll see the bench that France were able to bring on, which in my view is a tip of the cap, is a chapeau to this Irish team, that they went for the 6-2 split on the bench. They went for the power game, and that was ultimately the difference in the final quarter.
Brian, Rory, Gareth, we'll discuss it all with Jill. Final score in Paris: France 30, Ireland 24.
That's the way.
On hand to...
Throughout the years in French teams,
Password.
Area protection.
Change what they... Press the green. Wi-Fi.
Jamieson Gibson Park.
That's the way. Motorway, the site to sell your car.
Time in Paris, and it was a spirited fight back from Ireland after the break. Josh van der Fleer barging over to keep them in the hunt. Some great vision from Jamieson Gibson Park, bringing them to within a point of the home side, but France's physicality was impressive. Cyril Bay extending the lead, and it ended 30 points to 24 to France. So let's take a look at the Six Nations table then and see what that means. And of course, France, top of the table, the Grand Slam still very much on for them. Ireland in second place. Earlier today, Wales beat Scotland 20 points to 17 in Cardiff. Wales sitting in fourth by rights of their points difference. Of course, that Italy-England game to come tomorrow. Some reaction from Paris now. Let's hear from the French number 8, Gregory Aldred.
Gregory, it's
I can't hear anything.
You can't hear?
Sorry.
It's fantastic to be back in the Stade de France with a lot of people.
Yes, this stadium full like this, it's always a great moment to play here. And we knew before the game that we will need a lot of support to win against Ireland. And today we had a magnificent crowd in the stand.
And a fantastic performance from yourself. How tough was that physically?
Yeah, really physical game. We knew it, but honestly, it's a win we made at 23 players. We saw all the guys coming out from the bench. They were awesome today. So honestly, you pick me like man of the match, but I think it's all team today.
And you're the only team left that's capable of winning the Six Nations, getting a Grand Slam. How excited are you moving into the rest of the tournament?
Well, this tournament is the best tournament in the world. Every weekend it's a really tough game, so before thinking of Grand Slam or anything, we just do it step by step. We have a huge game away game in Scotland next week, in 2 weeks. So we just need to prepare this game and do not think about the rest.
Congratulations, best of luck.
Thanks a lot.
Great stuff. I'm not surprised Gregory Aldrich struggled to hear the questions there. You can imagine that atmosphere in Paris absolutely pulsating after seeing such an impressive performance from France.
That was a ferocious test match. It really was. It doesn't get much more challenging than that. That's what Six Nations is all about. 100% commitment from both teams. Physicality was off the scale. And it is on days like today that you're so glad to be sitting in a studio and not out there. There'll be aching bodies tomorrow. But huge credit to both teams. I thought Ireland showed incredible ticker to get back into the game. Could have been down and out, needed to score first in that second half, managed to do it really quickly, and then it was game on. And then France found a way to get back into it and close it out ultimately. And just a great test match, in general. And who knows, these two could see one another in a World Cup quarterfinal very easily in a couple of years' time. And it's it's very level. There's not much between the sides, as we saw from the final score. You know, one score game.
It's only about 18 months till they might be in that position, which is remarkable, really. Gareth, you were wincing at some of those hits going in. As Brian says, a hugely physical contest.
Massively physical. And I think within this whole game, which we haven't really touched on, there was a subplot within the plot. And I think that's Sean Edwards' influence to not just the structure of how France defend, but with the attitude they defend. And I felt even when Ireland came out in the second half and realised France were kind of closing them off on the outside, so they decided to go around the ruck with Gibson Park's try up the middle. France still stuck to their structure. They still believed in their structure and were very physical when it came to just not just the ruck area, just when it came to one-on-one tackles. And I think that having that physicality, having that real presence on the gain line is something that really gives them confidence. And again, I think you go back to what has to be the Sean Edwards influence on it.
Just look at the way that they're celebrating with their fans there in Paris. Of course, wonderful to see the stadium full after such a long time. And we said it last week, the championship is all the richer for France being in this kind of form.
I think it needs it. It needs as many teams that are playing. And look, arguably, this is the two form teams. Gareth said it before about the Northern Hemisphere, arguably the two form teams in the world. You know, South Africa are up there, and it was brilliant that they were able to put on a spectacle like that. And look, we look back and we'll analyse and say there were mistakes by both sides, but those mistakes came about because of the physicality that the opposition brought, and they really went after each other. I think from an Irish point of view, they'll be a little bit disappointed with a couple of things, but what I liked was, Brian said, the way they got back into the game. Then they changed their tactics a little bit in the second half. They started to come back down the short side because of that blitz defence that Alfie was talking about. So they showed a lot of smarts. They outscored France 3-2, but like ultimately, probably their mistakes told a little bit more than France's did.
Yeah, the penalty count is grim for Ireland. Let's take a look at the way they did come back into it after the break. We talked about what the key messages would have been at halftime. Certainly they would have said, get out there, get on the scoreboard.
You know, it began with a big turnover from Andrew Porter. He was getting smashed in the first half, but he stayed strong in there. And Ireland have backed their maul in recent times, not just in the last number of months, not even November, but going back a couple of years. They were one of the first teams that were using those kickable penalties to go to the corner to chase 5 or 7 points, and they just got a great set there. France tried to pinpoint who the ball carrier was, and sometimes it shears like that, and you can get fortuitous as Josh van der Flier was, and came right through the middle. So it was exactly what Ireland needed to get back in.
And Josh van der Flier is very good at close range like that, isn't he?
He is. I'm sure Dan Sheehan will be a little bit disappointed he didn't pass the ball back. I think that as hookers you want to sit at the back of that, but it is something that Ireland work really hard on. It's another, I think Simon Easterby brought it on a lot, like Brian said, over the years, but I think it's another little bit where we see Paul O'Connell just to take, you have to keep evolving and you have to keep getting better. France, especially in the first half, are really good at defending the Irish maul. And again, Ireland thought the way around it and were able to get a few moments in the game that the maul paid real dividends for them, and that was one of them.
And that kind of rocked France a little bit, brought Ireland back into the game, and then that third try, it was game on then.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that instills the mentality that's within the French camp, because throughout the years and French teams have gone past, you think that they'd put their head down and just kind of finish with it, but they always felt that they were still going to, that they wanted somehow to stay in the game. And with this try now, as I was saying earlier, the French defence was coming up fast on the outside, on the wide, so there's always going to be gaps sometimes on the inside, and I think just finding a lazy defender, finding a guy that comes around and just doesn't, his job really is to get in close to the ruck. That's his first ultimate job, but he's got a little bit, Williamson's got a bit too far out wide there, and just an easy step in for someone like Gibson Park who's going to pick that out.
Yeah, it was really clever from the number 9. Willemse would probably have to work a bit harder around to the open side of the ruck, and when you arrive late, sometimes you're not set, and the clever 9 sees the body shape of that first defender, that first pillar, and if he's anyway turned out, he's going to have a snipe. And as we see again, they're all set there, they're in good shape, a reasonable collision, but look, lots of bodies committed to the ruck. Willemse's around late, that's quite big spacing, so he's worried about being beaten on the outside, but the cardinal error is letting a scrum half back on your inside. You just, as guard, that is your space. Never let anyone through there. You can always blame your second defender if you get beaten on the outside, but that is your role.
And of course, Joey Carberry's conversion meant they were now within a point. But France, you just felt they had something else to bring.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a real element of the game for France. This kind of counter-up. Yes, it's an Irish foot that ends up kicking. I think it was James Ryan. But it came from that huge counter-up. And then it was just all about the French power again. And in fairness, Angus Gardner got skittled in the middle of it. But Cyril Bay, who I thought was exceptional tonight, finished that really, really well. But that all stemmed from that massive counter-ruck. It was a real story of the game, and it's something that France has brought, and we talked about it before the game.
What a powerful front five they've got, though, France. You know, amongst the best you'll see in the world.
Absolutely, and I think probably the worrying thing for other teams is the impact they have off the bench as well. You know, like these guys, Antonio and Bay and Marchand, they can go hard for sort of 50, 60 minutes, and then they have real impact coming off the bench as well. And that is probably the frightening thing with this French team.
Let's talk about Irish decision-making then, because they had a penalty, and we were all debating in here what they should do. James Ryan decided to go for the penalty kick. Was that the right call?
Listen, of course it's not the right call because they haven't won the game now, but it's easy to look back retrospectively. But in real time, all of us were discussing and deliberating it here, and because they'd had success from the previous small where Van der Fleer had gotten his try from it, it seemed like the obvious route to go. They were 6 points behind, so they're going to have to score at least another penalty to only draw the game, whereas 7 points would have put them into a lead if they'd scored the try and knocked over the conversion. So I'm just surprised with this team's mentality that they go to the corner so often, but yet when it got tight like this, that they didn't back themselves.
I also think the clock had a big part to play in why they should have gone for the corner, because you know the last 10 minutes is kind of entering the red zone, so you're not going to have many opportunities within the last 10 minutes. So if you have a nailed on opportunity to have a set piece right on the opposition's try line within that kind of last 10 minutes, then I feel you should always take it if the scoreboard dictates that way.
It was so close, and they had the momentum at that point, Ireland, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. And France actually looked a little out on their feet at that point, and even sort of a minute or two later, France get the ball back, and there was a real sense of they were just trying to hold on to what they had, and that's probably, again, it's hindsight. Brian said it there. You know, you're looking at the scoreline now, and you're saying they should have, but there was just a real feeling that they could have just kept France and these big men that had went through a lot of work under pressure and really backed that maul, which is a massive weapon for Ireland.
Let's take a look at the France try that wasn't. Jaminet, who kicked beautifully all day, looked as though he was in to score a third try for France. Was it a try? You said not.
Well, the thing is, you know, Ben Whitehouse, who's the TMO, you know, I guess it's very difficult for him to overrule the referee, Angus Gardner. He said, I'm ruling it a non-try. I haven't seen it put down, so anything that you have seen to change my point of view. To be honest with you, it felt like there was a knock-on at the previous ruck, but they didn't go back for that. They went back for a penalty, an infringement, Caelan Doris. In all likelihood, the try was probably scored, but unless you can definitively see it touching the whitewash or over the try line, the TMO couldn't do anything about it.
And it was Jaminet who kicked then the final penalty of the game. He kicked so well all day, didn't he? What a great man to have in your team. He's so reliable.
And you know, any international team that's going to do well or be in the top tiers of the world has a reliable goal kicker from pretty much any distance. Because it doesn't just give you the opportunity to have kicks, it actually stops teams kind of defending or living on the edge within certain areas. Because, you know, anywhere within opposition half, if he has the ability to kick, then a team is always going to sit back a little bit. It's not going to take the risks. So to have him in there, not just kicking, but with the knowledge that the team knows that they can't give any penalties away in their own half, is also a tool as well.
OK, let's get some more reaction from Paris, and we can hear from the head coach of Ireland, Andy Farrell.
Andy, clearly a disappointing result, but a huge amount of positives to be taken tonight.
Yeah, obviously we come here to win, and obviously come here to perform, but there's another side, in a class side in France, that's obviously going to have a big say in that, and they certainly did from the start, didn't they? 10 points down after 6 minutes certainly wasn't in the script, but fair play to France, and obviously getting to a stage early on in the second half, though, it was 22-7. I think that just shows everything about our side, really. The character, the guts, the fitness levels, the want to go and play and get ourselves back in the game. You know, I couldn't be more proud of that.
Or letting a team out to a lead like that, or does it please you more the fact the way they came back in?
Well, I'm not pleased about the first one. I'm unbelievably pleased about the second one because it shows what we're about. You know, it shows that we've got the courage to go and put our game out there when we're under pressure, to get in front and to make sure that we start well is something that we need to look at.
Some good individual performances from the likes of Joey Carberry, Mac Hansen on the wing. Those guys really put their hand up.
Yeah, and we expected them to because that's how they've trained, you know. But I thought the forward pack, you know, it's tick for tack, wasn't it? Set piece wise at times, you know. That their scrum was obviously very powerful, certainly in the first half. But we sorted that out, and you know the front row lads going for as long as they did, and digging in, and a few lads falling over, and a few changes along the way. All in all, it comes down to one hell of a test match, really, wasn't it? And we get a point here, and at 22-7, you're probably thinking that that's not on the cards, but again, the courage and the character that got us the bonus point here will stand to us.
Italy at home in a couple of weeks. How do you approach this next sort of fallow week? Do you give the guys some time off to recover, or do you try and work on the things that you need to take
We're
forward?
a squad, and there's certain boys that need some game time as well, and they'll be given that, and there's some boys that need a rest to lick the wounds and recover properly, and we'll analyse that game like we do every other game and make sure that we come bouncing into the Italy week.
And best of luck for the rest of the
OK, highlights now from today's earlier match as Wales hosted Scotland at the Principality Stadium.
Made some number of tackles last week, Wales. 187 more than any other side. They're tackling again for all their worth, but will it be enough? Out wide, Darcy Graham, great feet. Oh, great feet from the young man. Rhys Sammet stood in front of him, looked like an immovable object, but somehow the 24-year-old from Edinburgh found his way home. Wales have possession. They have the ball, the crowd are on their feet. It's advantage to Wales, and they are looking to take advantage. Over they go. Francis with the try. It wasn't the prettiest of mauls, but it was effective.
Is a maul ever pretty?
Depends on who you talk to.
Very true.
He thinks it was a thing of beauty. He gets his second international try, and this is a game that just ebbs and flows. Wales within 3 metres. Up comes Finn Russell, knocks it forward. Wales will play on. Cuthbert around the corner. I don't think so. Schumann lets him go. He loses control over it. Oh.
Nick, the player has clearly put his foot into touch, so you need to go back for your penalty.
It's not a penalty, mate. I just had it as a knock on. Do we need to have a look at it?
This is Finn Russell attempting to intercept. And if you stick an arm out like that, particularly in that area of the field when you're defending, and you don't get there, you know the outcome that's coming. On the evidence that we've seen, you can absolutely understand the decision that's been made, and it is an enormous moment in this game. Finn Russell, yellow carded.
We're good on the mark here, guys.
Wales have numbers out wide if they choose to go there. Scotland making it an arm wrestle. The arm of the referee is raised once more. Advantage to Wales. Liam Williams steps back inside when he may and should have gone wide. Williams, bigger, drop, goal is good. After all that, Wales come away with points.
So Wales get their championship up and running. Gareth, huge sigh of relief all over Wales tonight.
Yeah, this was a huge game for Wales. In terms of result, not so much performance, because I felt the performance, again, there's still a lot for them to work on, but I thought what was impressive is there were certain areas of the game where against Ireland last week, Wales were vacant. When it came to gain line presence, when it came to physicality, they were totally out-dominated last week. And just to have them few positivities, is a really, really good sign. But it was all about the result, and they'll move on now as a better squad and a better unit thanks to just the win.
It showed huge character, particularly that last 10 minutes, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And to see that out, I think the big thing for Wales, you always knew that they would come back, especially at home. And there were moments whenever you felt that maybe Scotland might get away from them. But yeah, I think that'll really stand to them. I think it shows a lot about the characters and the leaders within that. So that's a really important win for Wales.
A very quick word on events in Rome tomorrow. A big match for England. And Eddie Jones is feeling very bullish by the signs of him.
Yeah, in fairness to Italy, they were pretty impressive in the first game against France, albeit they lost well in the end. But if they can put up a decent performance and get the home crowd on side, maybe they can be inspired by their under-20s team that had their first victory against England last night. So you'd anticipate that England will bounce back. Just what sort of matter of performance?
Look forward to that. Well, just a reminder that tomorrow England, of course, will be looking to register their first win of the Six Nations after losing to Scotland in their opener last weekend. 2:15 here on ITV as Eddie Jones' side travel to Rome. Followed by highlights from the latest round of Gallagher Premiership matches, 11:45, or catch the repeat over on ITV4 on Monday from 7 o'clock. Our coverage of the Players' Championship continues over on ITV4 right now. Neil Robertson and Jimmy Robertson are going head-to-head in their semi-final in Wolverhampton. The winner will face Barry Hawkins in tomorrow's final. And finally, 3 of the top teams in women's football, Canada, Spain and Germany, will soon be joining England in the Arnold Clark Cup. The round-robin tournament kicks off on Thursday. So my thanks to the guys for their company this afternoon, as ever. Today's match in Paris has lived up to its top billing. France now find themselves the only team capable of going for a Grand Slam. They've certainly set out their stall, haven't they? Enjoy your night. Bye-bye.
Coverage of the Guiness Six Nations on ITV is sponsored by That's the Way.